It's Daryl here. It's Friday coming up on 7:30 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. So, a few things occurred to me lately concerning the media. I don't know if you guys, first of all, if you guys have heard of the case of Thulos, Theodis Doulos and his wife disappearing, Jennifer Doulos. She disappeared back, I think it was about 8 months ago. It's a big case here in Connecticut. Recently, Theodis just committed suicide. And here's where the media comes into play. Initially, it was reported that he died from carbon monoxide poisoning. And then within the hour, there were reports that he was still alive. It was an unsuccessful attempt. And all over Facebook and Twitter, I don't know if I'm stereotyping here, but the Trump supporter, the media bashers, all jumped out saying, "Oh, the media is so quick to be first and not to be right." And there was bashing aplenty all over social media that somehow that the media was to blame for the misreporting. As far as I could see when I looked into it, it was a tough. First of all, it was a tough one to call. Theodis was actually, they just more or less what you would call pulled the plug yesterday at 5:32 p.m. He was barely alive. Initially, I think the first responders did not detect a pulse, so he was declared dead. The media reports this, but on the way to the hospital, they detect a faint pulse. Then it's reported that he's still alive. He still has a faint pulse. And like I said, the media bashers, because that's my problem, my point here. In this Trumpian era, the cult of Trump, the media, along with scientists, have become the enemy. And somehow, the cult of Trump just takes the word of one man over scientists, over the media, over everybody else. One thing I could never stand was when Trump just stands there and points out the news cameras that you're all liars. There's that media, the lying media. When in fact, he plays to them. Without that media, he would have no national coverage. He owes them all of his exposure. He wouldn't have the grand stage that his ego so desperately needs without his lying media, as he calls it. It's the ultimate hypocrisy and George Orwellian Trumpism. I don't know. I imagine most of you are familiar with George Orwell and his book 1984, Big Brother, and all that. And that's what I was referring to. So looking more into this, I don't know if a lot of you are aware of how I thought back to the days of Walter Cronkite and how media was, everybody looked during the days of Vietnam and everything, and people looked to reporters as being important, as being their eyes and ears around the country, around the town, around the country, around the world. They were sacred. Their word was believed. 1987, Reagan abolished the fairness doctrine in FCC regulations. It says that it pertains to, and this will come into play later, it pertains to broadcast stations, TV and radio broadcasting stations, meaning terrestrial broadcast stations, and that's what it pertained to. So the fairness doctrine was no longer in play. It was more of Republican deregulation. And now, as some would argue, as a result, what we have is fake news, aka Fox News, Fox propaganda. Some would say CNN. I've seen arguments to the contrary, stating that because of the advent of satellites and cable TV, that cable TV wouldn't be under the same regulations as the terrestrial broadcasting stations, the regular antenna broadcasts that the regulations FCC were governing over. I don't know. This seems sketchy to me. I'm not sure if I'm buying that. I don't know if it was just an oversight that cable hadn't been quite invented yet. The fairness doctrine, I think, came up in 1949 initially, and like I said, Reagan abolished it in 1987, which gave way to the advent of biased TV stations, biased news reporting. And I think it was 1991, Democrats attempted to revive the fairness doctrine, and then Bush vetoed that. Again, a Republican. So the other day, just a day or two ago, I something I had sworn not to do. I jumped into the fray on what I saw was the bashing of the media. That the media can't get it right, and you can't believe what the media says, and all these things. And I presented my point of view on Twitter and whatnot. That it wasn't actually the media, and these guys were claiming how quick the media is to grab a story and run with it and not get it right, when at the same time they were doing the same thing. They immediately assumed that it was the media that was at fault here, when in fact it was a tough medically. It was a tough case because the guy was brain dead and had a faint pulse. It just wasn't detected. I don't want to blame the first responders, but they found no pulse, and then they found a pulse later. So how you could blame the media just for reporting the facts, I don't know. So I much to against my better judgment, I jumped into the fray on Twitter and Facebook, and then took to the defense of the good old media. I believe in the media. I believe in reporting. I think journalism is a noble, important part of American society today. I do. I believe that. And I think maybe we should look more back into getting into the fairness doctrine, where both sides, that we have such bias. The problem these days is it's getting to the point where we have no idea what to believe anymore. Everything is scare tactics too. Now, as far as like the coronavirus, I noticed myself that there was an awful lot of video and pictures of the plane being detained on the tarmac, and people with masks on. And to me, that was very fearful images. And I wanted to find the facts. All I want to know is how transmittable is this virus? What is the mortality percentage on this virus? I think, though, without blaming the media on this, I think the problem is there wasn't a lot of facts initially. I couldn't find a lot of facts initially available on this virus. So I'm giving the media an out on this, that perhaps they were just providing what they had, the news they had on it, and not wanting to report something that isn't correct as far as the mortality rate and all that, because it's still kind of sketchy with the mortality rate. The numbers are just still coming in from China. And the scary, what I consider a little alarming, is the numbers I gave the other day in my video almost doubled a day or two later as far as the reported case and the deaths. But again, it goes back to what's the mortality rate and what are the chances. I think not to get off subject, but the real issue with the coronavirus is they're afraid that it's going to go to countries that don't have a solid healthcare system. I don't know if we should be worried about that, but no, that's their worry though. And that I saw another report yesterday that I think there was no one under the age of 16 that had died from the coronavirus. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, but it seemed that it was mostly people over 60, 70 with health problems already. So, in general, I mean, it's not a zombie epidemic. When you see all these images on TV, you don't know what to believe. It's But then again, I think. A lot of times, I think the media is just a reflection of us. They want people to watch. They want to give people information that they want. They want viewers. They need viewers for revenue. So they're going to give people what they want to watch. Now, sometimes they cross over a line. aka Fox News, and get a little carried away where it becomes a cult. But so anyway, that's what I looked up today on the fairness doctrine. And the sketchy thing is, when the fairness doctrine did exist, it pertained to broadcast, to TV and radio terrestrial antenna broadcasts. And the view of many people is that that Reagan's 1987 rollback of that regulation wouldn't even have any effect, because that fairness doctrine did not pertain to satellite and cable news. Maybe something we should look into. If I were a presidential candidate, that might be a platform. A good idea, a campaign promise. Looking into reviving a fairness doctrine, so there's news that people can rely on somewhat, where we don't have extremes. In other words, reviving another fairness doctrine for the 21st century. Just a thought. If any of you Democratic contenders are listening to my channel. All right, you guys have a great Friday.